All right. Recording has started. Episode 3 of the Special Interest Podcast. Riley, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Riley Thompson. I've just finished my honors thesis, my psychology honors, where I was studying medical large language models and what healthcare stakeholders thought of trust and risk. So a very interesting topic, and I think a topic that we'll be talking a little bit about today, particularly with transcription. So thanks so much for having me here, Liam.
Awesome. All right. So the project for today, I'm going to bring up my shared document so we have something to go off, is we're talking about AI scribes. And I have a bit of an issue with things around privacy things. I'm kind of a privacy nut when it comes to AI. I want to make sure that what I'm putting out there is very much secure. And anything that goes to another website goes through to an API. I can't really guarantee that risk. So what I've done is try to run these AI models completely offline. And Riley, would you like to maybe explain what I mean by things running completely offline?
Yeah, so I guess at the moment when we're thinking about clinicians using these sort of transcription scribe services, what's currently happening is the recording of the session is being sent off to some company, probably over in America, that's then working with the data, um, doing who knows what, and sending it back. And so, when we're talking about privacy and risk, um, it can be very difficult or basically impossible to guarantee what's going on with your data in those kinds of circumstances. And so that's where this new sort of open source initiative can come in with local hosting of information. So instead of being sent to the cloud, it can sort of just all happen from your hardware essentially. So yeah, it's a very fascinating topic, and I'm keen to hear more of what Liam has been looking into.
Yeah, I'm lucky enough to have a pretty beefy sort of gaming PC, and these AI models just love having the GPUs. They everything just runs straight off the graphics card in my computer, so we're able to run these things at pretty much what you see on ChatGPT speeds. They're not the most complicated models that we're running, but they're pretty effective for what we're use cases are. So maybe we can go into what an AI scribe is, how they kind of work on a basic sort of level, and then we can go into some more of the details of what things that we're actually going to use to run it. So basic thing of an AI scribe, we record a therapy session, we record a GP visit, whatever it happens to be. That gets transcribed into words, and in a large language model, those things can be used as context in tokens, and they can be then used to um, run it past a structured prompt, which turns it into a clinical outcome, clinical documentation, either a SOAP note, a clinical note, a GP report, a referral letter, whatever it happens to be. So does that sound about right?
Yeah, it sounds good. It's really fascinating because I was recently having my skin checked, and my dermatologist just beforehand said, "Hey, you okay if we transcribe this session?" Which I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, let's do it." So it puts it into a real practical perspective, I guess, where the session is being recorded, it's then being processed with some form or combination of AI models, and is then being generated into clinical documentation. And so it's speeding up that process. And so I guess the difference here is that it's all local. So would you like to chat a bit about that, Liam, and sort of how that works?
Yeah, so the vast majority of these AI scribes, from what I understand, they're using OpenAI's Whisper AI model to do the transcription. So they're extraordinarily easy model to run. They are very lightweight, but they're so powerful. They're trained on tremendous amounts of voice data and turning that into spoken, actual written word. They're extremely good. The model that I'm using for the large language model, the next part of the processing. So we've got two separate parts. We've got the transcription model, and then we've got the large language model. So we treat those a little bit separately, and in the front end, they combine them. But with this one, we're treating them separately. And I'm not too sure if you've heard of it, Riley, but we're using DeepSeek today. We're using DeepSeek R1. Have you heard of it?
I think basically everyone's heard of DeepSeek at this point,
Yeah,
with some of the things it's been doing with the stock markets over in America. So it's
yeah.
become quite popular. But yeah, fascinating to get that involved.
Yeah, so what we're going to be using today is the DeepSeek R1, but it's not quite the full model. What we're actually going to be using is what DeepSeek put out there. They took one of Facebook, Meta, Llama models. So they have some extraordinarily good small models that are completely open source. And we're using the 8 billion parameter model for Llama 3.1. That's 3.1. Put it on there. So it's a distilled model. It's a which means it's being able to train it to turn it into a reasoning model. So, Riley, could you maybe explain a little bit what a reasoning model is?
Absolutely. So at the moment, first off, we had large language models, which was sort of when ChatGPT stormed onto the scene, where you prompt the system and it will basically give you an instantaneous prompt responding. When it comes to what's proposed as these new reasoning models, what's sort of happens behind the scenes is the large language model gets trained on chains of thought that sort of look like it's reasoning through things in a human way. So it'll say something and it'll be, oh, wait, how about I consider this? How about I try that? And what it can then do is when a person prompts the system, it'll go through some form of chain of thought and provide a better response that's typically more accurate than what it would give just on a single shot, or if it was just responding straight away. So that's
Yeah,
where the term reasoning comes in. Yeah.
they're given time to think. It's extraordinary. And when we see it in the prompt, in the output from the language model, it's actually going to start off with something saying thinking. It's very, very cool stuff. So yeah, let's get started. So the therapy session that we're actually going to be transcribing is an absolute classic. People who've been through the same OT degree that I did are very familiar with Carl Rogers and the interviews that they did back in the day with Gloria. So we're going to be transcribing part 2. So let's get started on that. We will show off Vibe. That's just a wrapper for Whisper AI. So all of it running offline, and we'll show you how that works. Let's see. We'll start doing our screen share for that one. Let's see. And we'll get the transcription. Hopefully this gets done in about a minute. Okay.
And so, Lee, when you say wrapper, what comes to my mind is sort of like a page with like a fancy button and you click, okay, go. Is that sort of what a wrapper is?
Yeah, pretty much. So we're loading up the video and we're just going to hit transcribe. See how we go. Let's see how long this takes.
And so at the moment, Liam, is this running purely on your computer?
Yep. There is
Okay.
nothing to do with the internet on this. Everything is being run purely off CPU and GPU.
Okay, so it's literally going to your hardware, it's being processed there, and it's coming straight back to your computer
Yep.
or your monitor.
Everything is being completely run offline and it is blazing fast. And it's looking pretty good. See how we go with this one. Nice, 38 seconds for a 10-minute session. I'm fine with that. All right, we can actually close out of that one. That's done. Yep, done. Oop. Okay, and now let's do a screen share for LM Studio. Now, I've already loaded in the language model for this one, and it is the DeepSeek R1 Distill Llama 8B GGUF. So if anybody's watching at home and wants to follow which model we're using, we're actually using the 8 billion parameter model for this one. I have tried out the 4-bit one. This just means it's can be loaded onto a smaller graphics card and it's maybe not quite as good quality. But yeah, we're testing out a few different ones. I found that the 8 billion parameter one is pretty good. So we're going to stick with this one. So let us add in context. So we add in our transcript. And now we're going to add in our prompt. Now, if we switch over to our Google Doc one more time, we'll be able to see our prompt. So I've actually used OpenAI's O3 Mini High to generate these prompts. There's nothing wrong with using a language model to actually improve your prompting. The better your prompts and the more context that you give a language model, the better output it's going to be. So this is what we've done. Okay, so we're just going to copy and paste this one. And the first thing we're going to be doing is a prompt for a therapy note. Let's see how it goes. I haven't actually tested this one yet. Let's see how we go. And this is also going to be done in US English. So there's a bit of work to be done, but this is just a bit of a case study. And let's send this one through.
And so that prompt is acting like instructions for how the large language model, or sort of like the AI brain, is going to process information and then spit it back out the other side.
Exactly.
Is that right? Okay. Yep.
Okay, and we go back over this one, and it's thinking about it. All right, and it's doing some thinking.
It's always interesting to read the chain of thoughts because it can be so eerily human-like.
Yeah. And it's running a little bit slow. I think this is because I've loaded so many different things in the background. Usually I'm getting about 70 tokens per second, and we're looking at about 12 tokens a second, I think, at the moment. So why didn't that work? Oh, that will be because of the prompt itself. What I might actually do is I'm going to get a new chat. I'm just going to ask it to run a SOAP note. Okay. This is the notes from a therapy session. Turn it into a detailed SOAP note.
And so when we're thinking about this in the future, say a clinician's using a system like this, they could have some kind of standard prompt that they use that structures their notes in a way that it's standardized across sessions,
Oh,
maybe even
absolutely.
across the whole clinic.
Yeah. Oh, it's not readable. Okay, what I'll actually do then. Why isn't it readable? I try to save it as an image. That's why. Of course. Okay, so what I'm going to do is load up Vibe again, and I'm just going to copy and paste in that transcript.
Okay, so I'll let my imagination run here for a little bit. I'm imagining in the future, a clinician has a session with a client, and at the end they're like, okay, sweet, yep, all good. They get consent for the recording of the session. It then gets automatically sent off to this local hardware that's running these systems like Whisper, that process information, and then it gets converted into sort of like a ship note or a report in the style that the clinician's done up, that then can like be printed off like literally as the client's walking out the door, or something like that, if the latency is low enough.
Yeah. Okay,
I
so here
mean,
we go. Turn the following transcript into a SOAP note. Be detailed. Oops. Because this is going out for publishing. Give it a bit of extra context. Okay, I'm just going to copy paste this one in. There we go. And I don't have my air conditioning on, so it's actually 32 degrees in my room. So this computer is working overtime right now. Okay, it's loaded in the context and they're starting to process the prompt. Let's see how we go. So what are some of the other use cases you can see for an AI scribe? What other sort of things can we see? I've seen some things for just being able to break down transcripts as far as a therapy supervision and trying to improve as a therapist, similar to what they'll do in, say, a call center environment. What else other things can you think of?
I'm thinking of potentially communication between clinicians and even between clinics.
Yeah.
Um, could be super important and could be streamlined a lot with a process like this.
Okay, that looks good. I'm wondering if I gave it enough GPU headroom. Okay, we're thinking. Okay, here we go. All right, we're running. Here we go. So some of the other things that I'll be doing is we can turn it into, say, a letter to the GP. We can turn it into a letter to a family member explaining a situation in more simplistic terms. There's all sorts of things that we can do once we actually have the transcript in for context.
And so when I'm thinking about the models that are sort of running in the background here, you said that they're distilled and that they're a bit smaller than what might be used by larger companies. What's the sort of rate of change at the moment for these types of models? Like, are there models that are being released? Is it every few months? Are they slowly getting better, or what does that sort of look
Days.
like from your perspective?
So what I'm looking at is what's going on Hugging Face at the moment, and that's kind of a repository for people to upload their open source models. And what I'm seeing is DeepSeek started out with, I think, 8 model releases when it came up with the R1, all with different levels of distillation. So we saw some 70 billion parameter models. We saw some 32 billion, things like that. So different size models, which means different levels of data within them that they can actually use for analysis. But what I'm seeing now is that people are applying the R1 reasoning to other models, such as other fine-tuned ones. So they're actually taking like what we're using now is like a Llama 3.1 general sort of 8 billion parameter model, and they're actually doing a fine-tune on it. So they're actually going to turn that into a medical specialized small R1 model. So the last I looked last night was, I think there was over 90 on Hugging Face just for fine tunes. So they are doing some fantastic stuff in the open source community already.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see just how quick stuff is evolving
Yeah.
with each new model release and then fine tuning and then all being available publicly online through sites like Hugging Face.
Yeah. And Hugging Face is also releasing some what they have for spaces. So spaces are like a web platform for people to upload their AI generated like almost mini apps. So it's another very cool thing that they're coming up with. So anything that you could possibly think of for small AI tools and that people want to try them out in a public space, the Hugging Face directory has opened that up. Really, really cool stuff. And one of the
And
things that LM Studio have done in their latest release here is they've actually separated out this thinking process as a separate place compared to where the actual model output is going to be. So it'll finish doing the thinking, and then it's going to spit out the SOAP note separately. Some very cool stuff. So it's running a little bit slow. I think this is because of the heat. What I'll also do is I'll just show an example of running a prompt without any extra context in it. So the more context that you give a model, the slower it's going to run. But you'll be able to see if it's just a general prompt asking a question about Carl Rogers or something like that. It'll be able to spit it out in lightning speed. Oh, here we go. Oh, nice. Here we go. Okay, and the other thing with LM Studio is you get a lot more freedom over the small things that you can do with the model. If you want to make some really serious sort of system prompts, structured outputs, you can load all of those in. So all the things that you see with the current AI scribes, you can pretty much do with LM Studio. You can have different folders for the different clients, all sorts of things. Really cool stuff.
And so, Liam, on a system like this, what would the pricing sort of look like? So if we're thinking if a human had to transcribe something and then write up a report, how would that cost compare to something like this system where it's running through these local AIs?
I think about these things of I did an assignment for counseling when I was in the OT degree, where we actually had to transcribe our therapy session, our mock therapy session that we did, and or our counseling session. And I remember that took hours to try to transcribe this and then to write our reports on top of it. That was like a full semester that we spent on that. It was extraordinary. And even in my clinical practice, so that's what 10-15 minutes each to go from memory of what happened during a session to try to do our clinical notes. So every session there's documentation on top of what we're already doing as the clinician. And that overhead can be a huge burden for trying to free up some of the cognitive load. So some of the things that are happening with AI, they're extraordinary for relieving some of the pressure on the clinician. I love what they're doing.
And so this note at the moment, how much is this approximately costing you? So this transcription and then this report.
To actually run?
Yep.
It's free. Whatever I'm using in electricity per hour, I'm not too sure, a few cents.
Yeah, probably not much.
No, this is running entirely off GPU. There's no subscription that I have to have for this. And it is extremely detailed. Wow.
And so something that I hear a bit about when it comes to like large language model accuracy is sort of hallucinations and it getting stuff wrong. So when it comes to these models, is there going to be inaccuracies? What's that going to look like from a clinician's perspective? Like, are they going to be required to read over it, make sure everything's correct?
100%. You have hit on one of the most key points. I'm actually going to go back to our Google Doc And that is always going to be that final point that we have there. We need to review these things in depth to make sure that what we're actually putting out there, these could be pulled for future court documents. They could be, they could be reviewed in the future. So we want to make sure that what we're actually putting out there is what actually happened. They are a massive time save. They are a cognitive load decreaser, but we still need to make sure that what we're putting out there is our work. So yeah, that's always the last part of it. Clinical review, 100%.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point to consider, particularly with the way that neural networks work, is that they're not foolproof and that there's always going to be problems. And at the end of the day, the way that it's currently situated is the liability is on the clinician's shoulders. So it's incredibly important that if anyone is thinking about running something like this, particularly at the moment with sort of smaller models that aren't quite as accurate, is you really need to be making sure that they're correct and going through with a fine-tooth comb, because like hallucinations can happen and it can just be the most random thing that pops up in one sentence.
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
All right, this is actually looking like a pretty good soap note. This is as detailed as you'd ever imagine. To write this, something like this, if you're just typing, this is a good 10, 15 minutes worth of typing. This is very, very high quality stuff. What I'm actually going to do, I'm just going to use this as my next prompt. And I'm going to say, okay, so based on the following soap note, I would like to update the referring GP about our plan for therapy with Gloria. Can you write a letter for updating? And I'm going to copy and paste in my soap note. Hopefully this runs a little bit faster. Otherwise, it's just going to be an issue with something I've done in the settings, because usually this runs so much faster.
Maybe the Zoom video at the same time's hampering a little bit.
Yeah, very much so. And the heat as well. It's not too happy.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that is an extraordinarily good therapy note for a completely offline language model. Just in amazement that these sort of things can be achieved. I've been using these offline language models for a couple of years for testing now. I think starting in probably mid 2023 when I started testing these. And the rate of improvement is just absolutely extraordinary. I am in amazement that these things are actually possible. There we go. It's going back into our thinking. Actually, what I might do, I might actually just reload this model. New chat, eject that model, reload it, make sure it's got maybe a little bit less context length, and flash attention. Good. Load it. And see if that improves the speed. Okay, we are loaded up. And I'm just going to rerun that prompt. There we go. Yeah, that's faster. Blazing fast now. Okay, great.
Yeah, wow, okay. Big difference.
Yeah, just a settings issue. Beautiful. Loving this. Look at that. And that all looks pretty good. We can do some refinement to it, but yep, 30 tokens a second, blazing fast. Good content, well structured. I'm happy with that. That's just saved me a whole bunch of time, and I can see my next patient. Very, very nice. How about So some people need extra processing time after a session, and they would be really benefiting from just having a letter afterwards.
I'm definitely one of the people who in a session will be nodding along, go, yep, 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 and then yeah, totally forget everything afterwards. So I'd find this incredibly helpful.
Yep. And we can do that in our terms. We can do 20 words for 2 different prompts and export all of this. So we've typed in maybe 30 words total, and we've gotten 3 different types of output. This is extraordinary. For an offline language model to be this fast, to have this level of thought processing, just extraordinary. Really, really impressive stuff. Yeah, I'm really happy with that. Okay, let's go back to our Zoom call and we'll stop our screen share. There we go. Cool. Welcome back, Riley. Okay. So interesting stuff. Being able to run entirely offline reasoning models, being able to transcribe recorded sessions with ease and copy and paste them straight into the system. This is all very, very possible. There's a lot of companies out there offering AI scribes, Novasite, Heidi AI, all these sort of places. They're doing a great job. They're combining transcription, recording, structured prompts, fine-tuned language models, and large language models to output different types of things. And they're doing some really cool stuff for automation and streamlining practices. And I'm just showing you how they can be kind of replicated in an offline way. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really cutting down a lot of the privacy risks and the different ethical problems that can sort of arise from unsecured documents and transcripts. Having it all local means that it's way less accessible, but also way more accessible to the right people as well. And yeah, the way that it's customizable is really interesting, and I think it's going to be helpful for a lot of people. Obviously, keeping in mind that there still are risks, so making sure that clinicians are reading over the notes and confirming it before they send out. Liam, I'm even thinking that in the future you could have sort of helper AIs reading over stuff to sort of, make sure that it's still correct to get a bit meta. What do you
Yeah,
think?
absolutely. And the good thing about LM Studio is already got built-in RAG, so that's retrieval augmented generation. It's more than happy to review documents, and you can change the temperature on language models to be even more concise and accurate, instead of being on the more of the creative mode. So yeah, we can deep dive into documents and get them to do proofreading of entirely offline. These documents never need to leave your practice. So absolutely great point. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's super awesome, and it's been great chatting a bit about it, Liam.
Yeah.
I think I'm as excited as the next person about
Yeah.
this topic
I
and
just
sort of
love being able
how
to
it
test these things. It's so much fun. For me, they're one of
absolutely.
my special interests, and there's a lot of technology behind them. And the more that you understand about how they work, I think the better that you understand how they can be used in practice. So
Mhm.
if you can kind of demystify what the different components are that's working, you can maybe make more use of them, more effective use of them, and maybe not to be too afraid of what this technology is if you have a really good understanding of how it works. And if we can break it down into the different APIs and things and run it all offline, yeah, we get a really good understanding of what each component is doing. So I love that.
Mhm.
So yeah, our working knowledge of it, compared to somebody like you who's really doing the deep dive into the theoretical side and seeing where these things are heading long term. Yeah, I can't wait to see what happens over 2025. And test time compute, chain of thought reasoning. These are some of the like most innovative things that happen in a very innovative field. Very, very soon, these language models are going to start thinking for themselves and self-improving. And when that happens, that's when we start to see the artificial general intelligence and artificial superintelligence explosion. So yeah, very exciting times coming.
Awesome. All right.
All right, I'll catch you later.
Thanks so much. See you, everyone.